Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Disconnect, the wedding planner. Disconnect the Wedding Planner is a Nigerian-Kenyan romantic comedy serving as a sequel to the previous Disconnect film, and tells the story of Otis, a man who is hoping to secure an important investment for his company by planning a wedding for an investor. However, he's shocked when the planner he hires turns out to be a scam artist. With little time to waste, Otis begs for as many of his friends as possible to help him with planning a wedding in Mombasa. This results in many relationships with the attendees becoming more unraveled, while Otis has to come to terms with his actions. I never saw the previous movie in this series, but I decided to go ahead with reviewing this one, because I enjoy any chance I can get to watch and review an African movie on Netflix. But as far as this movie is concerned, I wish I never saw it to begin with. It's a terrible rom-com that fails at being either romantic or comedic and is a complete mess when it comes to basic storytelling. The main character Otis started off okay in the beginning, but became less likable over time. He's depicted as a ladies' man, which I can only assume is something that carried over from the first movie, and this prevents him from being able to commit to long-term relationships. The idea of him changing his ways to become more monogamous is nothing new, and this movie manages to be even less inspired in its execution of this concept. He never makes any actual progress toward monogamy or the whole investment angle, or even toward contributing to the wedding itself. Even the background behind him and his daughter is barely explored at all, so he pretty much exists only as a vehicle to move the story along. I wouldn't even have minded so much if his character wasn't so damn annoying. He acts way too over the top in virtually every scene he's in, which often clashes with whatever tone the movie's trying to convey at any given moment, so I just couldn't bring myself to care about anything related to Otis. As for the other characters, if you can believe it, they're even worse than Otis is, because they barely have any development at all. Maybe some context from the first film is needed to understand everything going on, but the movie is too quick to introduce too many named characters in too short a time span, which makes it confusing to keep track of them. I would say the most notable of them all is TK, who's supposed to be the love interest for Otis, except she never made that much of an impression on me. For all the history and romantic build-up these two are supposed to share, they only have a couple of scenes together, which leaves their romance arc feeling hollow. And it's weird because Otis is supposedly obsessed with TK and thinking about her while he's with other women, but whenever the two do share some sort of emotional moment with each other, it never goes anywhere. There's no romantic tension that could hint at something more, so it's like, why bother? As for the other characters, they're not worth talking about. The only depth most of them have is the fact that they have names, the most consistent of whom are Khalid, Judy, Celine, and Richard, and while they do have some sort of arc, they're so rushed and poorly developed to the point of being comical. And the movie doesn't stop there. One character after another keeps getting introduced or referenced in what feels like every scene. Again, maybe seeing the first film would help me understand who these people are and what their importance is, but the problem is that none of them do anything important, whether they're physically in the movie or not. The vast majority of screen time in this movie is dedicated to a handful of these characters yelling at each other over random things related to the wedding. The way drama is started over silly stuff like what type of cake should be baked is so childish that it actually hurts to watch. At one point I asked myself, do people actually behave like this? And at this point, I have to say that the acting performed for some of these characters is just awful. I don't like to rag on actors very often because I know it's not easy to look convincing as another person on camera, but man, some of these actors feel like they would rather be anywhere else. Most of the performances and the dialogue delivery just feels weird and stilted. Celine in particular was embarrassing to watch, as she maintains the same monotone voice and facial expressions throughout the movie, no matter how serious or funny a scene is supposed to be. Some of the actors try their best where they can, especially in Judy's case, but for most of them the story is too touch and go to become properly attached to the characters. And this is without a doubt the biggest problem this movie has, is just how terrible its pacing and story structure is. The premise itself seems to come out of nowhere, as Otis goes about his day being a womanizer, and then all of a sudden he finds a way to potentially secure an investment for his business despite the audience never knowing what that business actually is. Everything else that happens in the movie hops from one scene to another without any rhyme or reason. One moment there's a wedding plan, and then there's a business meeting, and there's a therapist appointment. The audience gets no time to let things sink in, so the story never ends up making any sense. The funny thing though is that the movie feels both too fast and at the same time too slow. Nothing interesting ever happens apart from melodramatic yelling or absurd cheating scenarios that just made me feel embarrassed to watch. The wedding itself feels like an afterthought, as the movie doesn't even bother to show the actual ceremony, instead focusing on all the silly drama surrounding it. On that note, the movie also has a huge problem when it comes to tonal shifts. One scene might feature a moment that's dramatic with serious music playing in the background, and then all of a sudden it'll cut to Otis singing while drunk at work. Sometimes multiple shifts occur in the same scene, and it became increasingly more distracting and annoying to sit through. It feels like the movie has no idea what it's trying to be, like it's throwing as many darts at the wall as it can to see what sticks. The result is an awkward and mean-spirited story that feels uneven, unfocused, and just plain not fun to watch. This can be seen in the execution of its two genre elements, the first of which being the comedy. Simply put, the movie isn't funny. It tries way too hard to generate laughs with how much characters swear at each other, as well as featuring slapstick and strange situations that feel stupid even for a comedy. The speeding ticket scene might actually be the hardest I've ever cringed for an individual scene from a comedy. It's awkward, has no payoff behind the joke, and it's just stupid. I know I already said that word, but I can't understand why anyone would look at that scene and think, yeah, that's funny, people will laugh at this. The romance, being the other half of its genre elements, is executed just as lazily. I already talked about the lack of development between Otis and TK and sort of mentioned the cheating already, but let me tell you, they got way out of hand with this one. Richard and Celine have this weird back and forth where they love each other but also cheated on each other, and there's a man named Josh whose name dropped, and another woman named Nandi shows up at some point, and I just did not care what happened between any of them. The movie is so focused on the romance with the supporting characters that the romance with the main characters suffers as a result. As if the screen time with these characters wasn't wasted enough by the ridiculous drama, there are other times where time is wasted just from them doing nothing. For some reason, the filmmakers thought it was a good idea to show montages of everyone just dancing and drinking with each other, and it's just so boring. I get that it's a wedding film and everyone is supposed to be laughing and having a good time with each other, and truth be told, the fun atmosphere does come through now and then. The costume and production design is vibrant and pleasant to look at both on and off the wedding resort, and some musical moments do help foster a happy tone that fits with the wedding. But when these lighthearted moments are surrounded by so much inane drama and everything unfolds in such a sloppy and confusing manner, it doesn't take long for the positive vibes to wear off. For a movie that's supposed to center around a happy occasion, there's not a lot of joy to be found in it. Something else I noticed in the movie that I didn't think would be an issue at first was the sound mixing. The volume levels for characters are all over the place, with some being too quiet so you could barely hear them, or others being too loud to the point that they're jarring. I can remember one scene where Judy and Otis are talking to each other, and Judy is speaking at what sounds like whisper level volume, then Otis just lets out this big heaving sigh and goes, "Ah." The loudness of that sigh and the difference in volume between these characters was probably the funniest part of the movie for me, just because of how bad it was. But in all seriousness, I find it baffling at just how inconsistent the audio was throughout the rest of the movie. For a movie made in 2023, the sound quality is unacceptable. In general, the entire movie as it is now is a complete farce. It proceeds with everything from its romance to comedy to the story at large in such a cliche and uninspired manner that there's pretty much nothing to recommend about it, even for the sake of curiosity. Overall, Disconnect the Wedding Planner is a terrible rom-com that's neither funny nor romantic, and certainly not fun to watch. If you like rom-coms, or by chance were hoping to see a sequel to the previous Disconnect, just do yourself a favor and skip it. It's not worth the time. Whatever kind of value may have been in the first movie has definitely been lost in this sequel. Poorly written characters, a nonsensical story, weird tonal shifts, and bad comedy and romance make it a movie worthy of its title, and that it's best to completely disconnect from it and forget it ever existed. What did you think about this movie? Did you hate it as much as I did, or were you able to find some redeeming factors in it? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Disconnect the Wedding Planner. Thanks for watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part where next time I review the British comedy drama Bank of Dave. Bye bye!